You're listening to Chicago Stories, a podcast from City Hall featuring the stories of everyday Chicagoans, as told to Mayor Emanuel.
Mayor Emanuel, Chicago Stories. Steve Cochran, that infamous voice here in the city of Chicago. Just for the record, the only reason he's here is he groveled last week when I was on his show.
He's not lying.
Yeah,
he's not lying.
How come I never get asked to be on the podcast?
As usual, delivering for the city.
You know what our motto is? One constituent at a time.
Right. Picking them off. Can I just, this is your interview, and I'm not comfortable not being.
I know this is role play.
This is really weird for me. But you always are so nice to bring things to the show. Your wife, Amy, of course, from the garden.
I'm just a messenger. I'm bringing her gifts.
And as you know,
you're in
inspiration, I've dropped about 30.
I know.
Or as I like to call it, a good start. So for you, kale, quinoa, what else have you brought me? Fresh fruit?
We've got beets out of the garden. Everything that's green, you have from Amy.
So what I have for you are things I wouldn't eat ever again.
Okay. This is what we're giving up, not just for Lent, but ever?
Ever.
Okay.
Hostess donuts. Frosted mini donuts for the office.
Are these better in the freezer?
I don't know, but I do know they go with Cheetos.
Oh, that's
Cheetos,
good. Oh,
extra,
fire Cheetos.
Flamin' hot, right? And of course, for the fine people, Oreo mega stuff as well.
Oh.
So the office.
Let me say this. You know who this is for? This is for Alana home from Brown. The college.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Uncle Steve could be
taking care of it.
Yeah, Uncle
How about
Steve.
That?
Where'd you get that? That's good. I like that. Yeah.
And of course, you need to wash it all down. So, real Coke.
You know what?
I don't touch it.
This is I want to read the consumer book.
I know I don't get to ask the questions, but what's the junk food go-to for you? Do you ever just junk food out?
All right, I do. I have there's. Do not put M&M peanuts within 100.
Oh, is that right?
100 yards. I can smell them. I know if they are there.
I'm more of an M&M peanut butter guy, but the peanuts?
M&M peanuts, and in fact, this is horrible. You go to a movie, empty the bag of M&M peanuts in the popcorn, shake it up, and that is...
You know what that is? That's a New York move.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah.
It's an Emanuel move. I really like it.
It's an Emanuel family move? Yeah.
All right, I'm taking back control of the show.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I do want to say 30 pounds, that's not easy.
You're getting there, man.
Congratulations.
And you know what people keep asking? They go, what's the secret? And this is important. People should write this down now if you're listening. Move more, eat less. Move more, eat less. It's quite a science.
You think is the FDA funding any research on age?
I'm hoping to get a late night TV, as seen on TV thing going on for my new, my new diet program. But yeah, move more, eat less. Hit the gym every day.
What do you do, Stepmaster?
No, with my niece.
Yeah. So what do we do?
A lot of pace walking and a lot of weightlifting.
I thought you were going to say on the eat less. I mean, that Amy's recommended diet is you actually, after years of resistance.
I dove in.
You're in?
Yeah. Well, I'm not all in.
You don't like the kale that much?
No, let's not kid ourselves.
Okay.
But I'm in. That Slurpee.
That would be called smoothie? Not Slurpee.
That Slurpee smoothie that was different colors of green.
Let's practice that again.
That was remarkably tasty.
Was it good?
It was really good.
The extra honey, because I said Steve's not going to do this without something sweet.
Right.
So let me ask you, how did you get into this? Was it a plan?
I was a jock. I played football and basketball and golf. And found out that I was never going to be a professional athlete. Wasn't gifted in that regard, but I was funny. So I became a disc jockey, sort of by accident, and started getting fired and moving around the country. And 14 or so jobs later, I get to Chicago in 1993. And other than a couple of quickies to New York and Detroit, which thankfully didn't work out, I kept coming back.
And the funny part was you also you do open mic.
I do stand-up comedy. We do 5, 6, 7 good-sized shows, and the New Year's Eve show is probably 1,000 people.
Where do you do it?
Move it around.
Really?
Yeah, it's out in Downers Grove this year at one of the classic old theaters. The Tivoli? You know the Tivoli in Downers Grove? Yeah.
So all right, I'm going to jump right into...
you want to open for me?
Yeah, one night I will.
Because you're funny, man. You're funny. I'm telling you, you could do it.
You think I can do this?
Yeah, you could do it.
Do you like doing the radio?
No, I love it.
Give me your best guest and your worst guest.
Well, this is not sucking up. You're one of my favorite guests because you come in, you answer the questions I ask, whether you agree with them or not, but you also know to have fun. So I think we have a great exchange.
I agree with that.
The worst guest.
Have you ever had a Yeah, give me the worst guest and give me what happened.
You know who Chelsea Handler is? Chelsea Handler, comedian.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, threw off the show. Threw off the show. She came in. She was checking her email. And she got up to go to the bathroom several times during the interview without saying anything, came back in.
Just got up?
Yeah, just got up, walked out several times, including at one point right after I asked a question. Now, look, it may have been a long night. May have been some pharmaceuticals involved. But I said, we're not doing anybody favors here. So, Chelsea, thanks for coming in. And there's been very few of those. But there's been a few.
A couple times gets up.
A couple of times got up. Yeah.
Did she get a hall pass to get up and go? Or
No. I'll give you another one. Robert Goulet.
What happened there?
Robert Goulet was one of the biggest jerks I've ever dealt with in show business.
Really?
We sort of, sparred back and forth. He stuck around for the interview, but a really unpleasant guy. But then there's other people that are just fantastic, and people that you might not expect. Former President Carter, who I know you know, could not be a sweeter man, and all the good he has done since he left office and continues to do. And I'll tell you a quick story because we both have Amy's in our life. My daughter's name is Amy. Amy Carter, of course, is President Carter's daughter. My daughter Amy came in. She wanted to meet President Carter. We go through the interview. He was talking about his book. And he had talked to Amy throughout the breaks. And we get to the end of the show. And he said, Steve, I just want to say one thing. This is on air. He said, I love my daughter Amy. And after spending an hour with yours, I love your daughter Amy.
That sounds
just a sweet man.
I will have to tell you one day a story about him when he was in North Korea. Gore, it's one of my favorite stories. Well, I'll just do it now. It is about you. So in the old days when Bill Clinton was president,
I remember.
The government phones for on and off for hearing and listening.
Okay.
Well, it had a handle when you had big national securities. Carter's over there. Nobody's happy that Carter just freelances, goes to North Korea, right? 94,
remember that too.
Right. So he's over there. President Clinton and Vice President Gore are talking, and every time Carter would say something, Gore would let the receiver up, which means you can only listen but can't be here. And he goes, "What a naive guy this is! Oh, come on!" And then he goes, "Yes, Mr. President, yes, click it back on." And he goes, and then Carter would be going, "I says, this guy's being dated a cleaner, and then hands off, right? So you're not supposed to be able to hear, right?
Right.
So at some point, hand is off. Gore's going on like, this guy is like a total chump. What does he think we are? Right. Gore sneezes, and with the hand off that you're not supposed to hear, and President Carter goes, "Bless you."
Bless you. So
meaning the whole time
the
United States government technology had failed, and he heard it.
The entire thing.
And just, it was great. It was great watching the blood flow out of Al Gore's face. And my view is, not only could Carter hear, my guess is the Korean government, North Korea.
Every one of them.
Yeah. So Chicago became your adopted town.
Yeah.
What do you love about it?
I love.
You said you keep coming back. So what do you? Now you're obviously here.
Well, my kids grew up here. Right. I love this city for what it is and for what this city wants to be every day. As you and I've talked about on my show many times, there are 99 great stories for every bad story that comes out. I defend the city vociferously because it drives me crazy when I see national coverage and the national coverage about the poor people in Austin or Garfield Park and the tough thing they have to do just to live their lives.
Right.
When there are great stories every single day. I'll tell you one of my favorites. I don't know if you've ever met Myra Sampson. Myra Sampson runs a charter school in North Lawndale. She started it in 1978, still runs it now. I think there's about 300 or 400 kids. The majority of her teaching staff went there, went on with their lives, and came back to teach. In North Lawndale, she's got an 85 to 90% graduation rate, and she is changing the world. And one of my favorite stories was we do a fundraiser for her every year, and one of the kids was a gangbanger. And Myra gave him an opportunity because she knew he was a smart kid. So she brings him into the school. It's 2 or 3 days in, and she can't find him. She goes outside. Myra's about 4.5 feet tall with heels. So she goes out and she sees him on the corner with his homies. She walks up to him, literally grabs him by the arm and says, "Your last chance," brings him into school. Fast forward, the kid graduates with honors. He goes to Marquette, and he comes back, and he goes to work for her because she had the guts to go and say, not you, not today. We're not losing another one. And she's making those kind of miracles happen every day.
See, so right before this, I was on the West Side with Block Club presidents.
Yeah.
Okay, with Michael Scott, the alderman, and a young man spoke up about why he's involved. He bought a home. He was a gangbanger, was in front of the judge, turned his life around, married, owns a home. He goes to Pastor Hannah's church. And I said, this happens every day across the city.
Right.
There are other things that happen, but it's the things that also sometimes that don't happen. You don't know. And there's really people doing, these Block Club presidents are doing exceptional things in really rough neighborhoods.
Incredible.
And their little block is a sanctuary. And doing a great job.
And don't you think that's the key to success down the road? We've got to build out safety and success in every block. Every block.
Totally. I asked you before if I could talk about this. Tell the story, and I'm maybe you're sick of this, but how you found your parent, your biological, not because you had your parents you grew up with.
Yep, those are the people.
Right. And, I told you did not know this, so I have an adopted sister.
Well, I want to hear this story.
No,
we're going to. That's right. I forgot it's your show.
Right. We're going to have you back a second time because you're really learning slowly that this is my show, not yours.
Not well, really. You would think, based on the surroundings alone, you would think I would know. I was adopted when I was 3 days old. I grew up in upstate New York. And as I said, started moving around the country, lived in 10 or 11 different cities. I get to Chicago in 93, keep bouncing back and forth. Now, I'm a spiritual guy. I'm in church most Sundays, and I believe things are meant to be. My dad dies in 1990, my mom in 1999. And I promise you, no matter how dysfunctional my childhood was, I never, ever thought, well, I have to go find my parents. Those people that raised me, those people that did their best, those are my parents.
Right.
However, there was a woman that used to do traffic on WGN named Ann Maxfield. She was there for a long time. Annie was also adopted. So one day on the air when I was doing the afternoon show, she said, you should search for your birth parents. And I said, well, I got no interest. However, when you go to the doctor as an adoptee, you don't have any idea what your health history is. The doctors, the assistants hand you a clipboard. What's your health history? You got nothing. So my kids at that point are teenagers. And I just finally decided, and I wouldn't have done this if my parents were alive. I really, because it felt like it was dishonorable.
There was some closure, right? I got it.
But my mother came to me at 21 and said, if you want to do this, I've got your back, which for that generation was very unusual.
Years ahead.
So I've talked to Annie, and I said, yeah, for the health records, just for the health records, naively not knowing what a pain it is just to get that. So we had some attorney friends, and they had some shortcuts, hired a private eye. 2 weeks later, and keep in mind, all over the country, right? 2 weeks later, the private eye calls and says, I have some terrible news, but I also have some great news. The terrible news is your father died a month ago. The great news is your mother runs the gift shop at Children's Hospital, and she's 15 minutes away.
It's
unbelievable.
Right. It's totally like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington type material.
Crazy. And it continues. I mean, there's layers to this that are nuts. The Tribune Tower is right next to the Hotel Intercontinental. My youngest sister, didn't know I had two sisters. My youngest sister is a meeting planner at the Intercontinental. She'd walk by the window not knowing I was her brother, thousands and thousands of times. But I'm blessed. I'm blessed beyond belief because I have my birth family. We see each other all the time. My mom is hysterical. She's very funny. She's on the show quite a bit. And I'm a really lucky guy. But I just,
So wait a second. Are you suggesting the comedy is a genetic thing, not a trained or so where are you now? So here's the thing. Where are you on nature versus nurture?
Well, I think it's...
And where were you before, and has it changed since you now met your biological
I was
mother?
More nurture.
Right.
Now I'm more nature. Part of it is we did an MRI and you could see Bugs Bunny. It was a Bugs Bunny, and Bugs always...
Wasn't that just a tattoo and you just couldn't see it?
No, it was actually Bugs.
I will just tell you, so I joke about Alana, my middle one, that she knew she was a middle child before we knew she was a middle child.
Really?
Yeah, she came out, and I am a big nurture.
Sure.
Huge nurture. You have 3 kids... every day the needle just moves this closer to nature. It's eerie, isn't it?
But in my case, and the thing is, you said you have an adopted sister. Adoption is unbelievably beautiful. It's an amazing thing. But I think we have an opportunity, even in this era of open adoption, to develop something in the age of technology to make it easier for people to get their medical records.
Well, that is without a doubt. And it's also important for your kids to figure this
Right,
out.
yeah.
Right. But it is. So no, my parents. She was 7 days old when they adopted Shoshana.
Now, where does she fall in line with you and the brothers?
Well, that's she's obviously the youngest.
Okay.
Not obvious, but she's the youngest, and I was 14. Zeke was 16. And Ari was 13, and she was 7 days old.
And what did you guys think?
It was actually interesting because my dad was doing the rounds.
Okay.
And and her biological mother, he says he checked on the baby, etc. And the biological mother says, "Well, you can have it. I don't want it." And he came home and became a week, obviously 7 days. So let's just say, in biblical terms, a 6-date conversation.
Yes.
And the family, I know you find it hard to believe, but every Emanuel had a different opinion. I know that comes as you're getting over it, but yes, as a rare. But we discussed it, and in the end of the day, my parents went to pick her up.
Were you for or against at the time as a 14-year-old?
I was for it.
Yeah.
That wasn't true of everybody else.
Well, you guys are a test case. You three brothers and this sweet little girl.
Yeah. Boys, different ages, different times. So, but now having you also become, you and I somewhat talked to this when the mics were off. In this job, and also now that all my 3 kids are, college or on their way, I've become a zealot about the importance of family. It is.
Well, I think some of it, I think, as we get older, right? But the rest of it is the emotion of being an empty nester. Mm-hmm. And how much you value when they're home, and you value because the time gets less and less.
Yeah.
In that way.
Just when you want to spend time with them, they don't want to spend time with you.
Yeah, it's
anymore.
a bad arc, right? Whatever that curve looks like. But it's not the same. It's new, but it's special. And
I got to do.
I'm with you, though. I'm with you.
Family. It's my hero is these single mothers that make it work.
Oh, it's
I
incredible.
don't know how they do it because I know what Amy and I have to go through.
Sure.
I just don't know how they do it. And I give my hats off to them.
Oh,
They're
it's
my
unbelievable.
heroes.
It's unbelievable. That's what I'm talking about with the neighborhoods, right? Because right now, we're talking, there's a woman working her second of probably 3 jobs in Garfield Park, trying to keep her kids out of trouble and safe and get them to school and back and getting it done.
And we will never know her name.
Exactly.
Okay, I want to ask you a question that I am really interested in. Seriously. You do comedy.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that we have a president that thinks about fake news, but we also know that people turn now more and more to comedy to kind of get not only their news, but actually to make their judgment.
Sure.
Do you think comedy has been good for our public discourse? And the birth of, not to use names, but of the Comedy Channel and the comedy/news format channel is good or bad for public discourse?
I think it's a push. I thought it was good because it created talk and it created interest in millennials. Mm-hmm. But my words, not yours. The current resident of the White House is a dangerous buffoon. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I
can go farther than you on this one.
There's not a lot of learning going on. So from a comedian standpoint or a comedy standpoint, it's beyond satire because every day is a new bit. Every day is a new sketch. He's dangerous, and comedy helps relieve some of that pressure. I wish I could tell you that it's engaging millennials to the point where they're going to turn out and vote. But that's the push that we have to make, because if millennials vote, all bets are off. We're going to be okay. But you can't just show up to a rally. You can't just get on Twitter and Facebook. And what do we have, 3% millennial turnout?
Yeah.
Insane.
So here's my thing, is they've made, actually, rather than enlighten and educate, they made people just cynical that everybody's just the same, screw them all.
Concern.
And you see it not only here, you see it in Europe. I actually think, mainstream news has done a horrible job. They became entertainment. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the entertainment decided to fill that void. And the problem is they've just done a pox on everybody's house. It doesn't really matter. And then when nothing matters, you get the buffoon.
Well,
I don't think it's a to B. So I'm not like this.
It's not. No.
But I'm not sure what has happened over the last 10 years. The arc of comedy and its satire, which is helpful, but there has to be a counterpoint. And mainstream news has just become entertainment, just a game of gotcha. And what we end up is everybody stinks. So therefore, well, we'll just try this idiot. And here we are.
Yeah, but I will defend this.
Okay.
Fake news boils my blood completely because without, and you know this better than anybody, without a free and substantial and funded and appropriate and successful press, nobody's getting watched and we're out of control.
Totally agree.
He not only has managed to take over the White House, he's managed to take over the conversation. And when you can paint CNN, the Chicago Tribune, I'm talking about regardless, and look, good days and bad days, right, if you're the mayor of Chicago. But when you can paint legitimate news-gathering organizations as being fiction purveyors,
Delegitimize them.
it's unbelievably dangerous, and people don't understand why, but it is. I mean, the general public, the people that buy into it. I run into people all the time. People I love, people I respect, people that run businesses. They go, it's the fake news. It's nauseating.
Yeah. So, well, I used to joke with Clinton when he would get red. This is horrible the way they're treating it. I used to say there's a difference between criticism and cynicism.
I completely agree.
And if all you do is say everybody's corrupt, that's all they do, then it's just like, give me a break. Not everybody is.
Okay, but this is interesting to me from my perspective to yours.
Okay.
But it comes off your question, so I'm not taking over.
It's okay. You can
What's a gotcha question to you now? And is a gotcha question to you now different than it was, say, when you were chief of staff?
Well, this is different because when you're the mayor, you own it. Got chief of staff, unless it's something you personally did.
Yeah, but you owned it. You were 24/7.
Yeah, the gotcha. I'll give you an example. I'm not going to call out the reporter. It's not fair. It was a report. Somebody said that Chicago and Illinois is the most corrupt place in the world. How do you ask us that? And I got to ask that question. I'm not sure this report would have passed academic review, okay? Let's just say that. But first of all, you have the chief of staff to the governor of New York indicted and convicted.
Yep.
That same week, the former Speaker of the House of New York is convicted. You had the Attorney General step down all in New York.
Right.
And you're telling me that we're I'm not saying we're not driven snow. Alabama's got governor that, you have the governor of Missouri. They're looking at impeachment because... Don't tell me about it. I mean, we have challenges. We have problems. Don't give me an academic report that says we're the worst place. So that, to me, that was, and then it says, they said that Chicago. I said, look, you know where Chicago was 30, 40 years ago? You know where it is today?
Listen.
Give me a break. It's the worst. We have a lot of work ahead of us. But so that to me was and especially in the week in which the Attorney General steps down in New York, the Speaker is convicted in his second trial, and the Chief of Staff to the Governor is convicted on also corruption charges. Don't call it.
Well, there's no way to answer that question. There's no way to answer that question because that's like, when did you stop beating your wife? That's that quandary, right? So that's an unfair question because
to me, this is also
show me the data.
But here's what I got. Journalists want to say that all politicians are corrupt. Therefore, some guy issues a report.
Well, it's lazy.
Yes. Okay. So that's the difference between hold my feet to the. You want to ask me about pensions. You want to ask me about the schools. I got it. I'll own the good and I'll own the bad and I'll own the ugly. But I want a question on the good as much as the bad and the ugly.
Well, I think that's why.
And Steve, you and I've talked about this
a bunch.
When you say there's a lot of good things, if it's negative, I'll get my question. Why is it you can't seem to ask about what's working?
Well, that's just it. I love when I'm able to showcase, because it's not done enough,
right,
the good things that are going on in town, and still able to ask you the stuff that I need to ask you. I mean, you and I disagree on Mike Madigan.
Yes.
Occasionally we disagree on the governor. Occasionally. It's becoming less and less. But to have a fair discussion. Yes, right. Honorary.
So what's your view of, are you optimistic about the future or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic because I'm a patriot and I believe in this country and I believe in this city. I believe in this state still. Maybe because we have to.
No, we have a lot of strengths. Here's my thing. We have our challenges. You got to make your challenges your opportunities. We also have a lot of strengths and we shouldn't be blind to them.
Right.
And then you got to invest in them and make them really, really muscle for you.
Well, here's the thing, too. The public needs to understand, not harping on the fake news, but as an example, if I go up to you and you're a plumber, and I go, well, you're a fake plumber. You're a fake plumber. It's, what you do. you're just charging people money, you're just throwing again. The lack of respect, which I think comes out of this Trump era for other people, not just politicians, for all of us.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredibly dangerous piece of this too.
Well, so here's my thing: is I believe the institution, the culture of this country is strong enough to withstand one bad person. I will say, if this goes on not 4 years but 8 years, that does have a corrosive impact on the foundation. Even though I think it's written into the DNA, it can have an impact, and it's not just temporary. It can be, because every politician sets a bar, and that bar moves. And this, I gotta be honest. Like when I was a congressman, I had a blind trust. Mm-hmm. It wasn't required. I did it. When I got to the White House, they made me redo it. So the idea that you wouldn't be the president of the United States post-Watergate would not be giving his tax returns.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And things we've read. David Axelrod, Robert Gibbs, Jay Carney, and I all had dinner last night. I can't believe I spent that much money to get my accountant to fix everything. I just said, forget it. Give them the one finger wave and say, forget it. We've now had not only a campaign, April 15th is coming on. You still don't know his tax returns.
Well,
did you ever think post-Watergate that would ever happen?
Absolutely not, and that's my concern. My concern is the damage he's doing in just how we do things is incalculable, because we never had a guy who is an ass enough to say no to everything. I mean, some of it, people are so stunned, and I think the Democrats need to take some credit for this too. You cannot allow this to get out of hand, and the Republicans in the House you can't count on them for anything right now, okay? Mm-hmm. The Republicans in the Senate, they did their report this week. It's a little more in line. But if nothing matters, if all the rules are out the window, then what kind of a country do we have? Okay,
so Steve, two things. One is, do you think the next president, him or her, says, here's my tax returns? Because we got a guy that says, I don't have to do it. Now, here I'll tell you what I'm mad about the Republicans. When he threatened Jeff Sessions, they all circled the wagon.
Yeah.
Said, John McCain, their colleague, somebody in the White House, really baseless human. Okay, nobody says a word. Now I called John and Cindy. I talked to Cindy the other day just to and see how she was doing.
Right.
Check it. I was Clinton's person on campaign finance. He and I went at it and said, okay, but we have I remember when President Obama got elected, it was Lindsey Graham, John McCain, President-elect Obama, myself. We met for 2 hours. We talked about what we could work on. And these guys, they'll defend Sessions as Attorney General, but their own colleague, who nobody knows, God bless him for his service in all the different ways, and nobody had the courage to say to the president.
It's outrageous.
Yes.
It's outrageous. And I'll tell you what, it's outrageous for the leadership and the lack of leadership. Where's McConnell? Where's Paul Ryan? Where are the parents in the room? If those guys are the parents, then we have problems. But if we have reached a point where you can't recognize that the humanity of anyone, not just a war hero, the humanity of a man dying is worth a joke, and you're going to make it about something else and say it's an internal matter?
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
Are you ready for the fast round?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Mm-hmm. Thick or thin pizza? Now, you can do it pre the 30 pounds. So however you want.
No, it's thin. It's
thin?
Yeah, it's thin. I'm a thin
You're
crust
showing
guy.
your New York roots.
No, I'm really not.
Punk.
I'm really not. No, I've tried. I've left with both. We now are the proud broadcast home of the Chicago White Sox. Yeah, it's White Sox.
You want to practice that again? Okay.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Okay.
River or lake?
River. Yeah, Chicago River.
Thank you. I had 4 guests in a row that were lake, and I'm glad you broke the
lake's a cop out. That's a beautiful lake, but people don't appreciate how great the river is.
It's something. Okay. Yeah. Sears or Hancock?
Oh, it's got to be the Hancock. I spent many years of my life there. The radio stations. Most of the radio stations in the city were in there at one point.
Okay. 12-inch or 16-inch softball?
Oh, 12-inch. God love this town, but 16-inch softball is a watermelon that's been left out too long. Baseball is meant to be played with gloves. Don't get me started.
No, actually, there was a big part of the really interesting part of the interview was your emotional attachment.
Right. 12-inch.
12-inch. We're joined by Steve Cochran on Chicago Stories. Steve?
Let me say something to you before you wrap up.
Yeah.
I appreciate the access because you providing access to the people in this city and the people in this state is important. It's important that they hear from you. And I think you show a side of yourself and your personality on the show that not enough people get to see. And if they get to see that, well, anything's possible. You might just end up being mayor.
You just may be the manager.
But thank you for this. It's fun.
Yeah. Do you enjoy radio, don't you?
Oh, I really do. Yeah, and I've done TV, and I've done some bad movies.
You love people.
It depends on the people. But I listen, WGN is legacy Chicago. To have the honor of being in that chair where Wally Phillips and Bob Collins and Spike O'Dell sat, it's a big deal. You know, I mean, it's the same thing. You look, the office you're in, the mayor of Chicago.
Big job.
We're both blessed.
I pinch myself every time.
Right. And if you don't, others will.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, and not to be nice.
So that's what they are on the L in the morning. Yeah, they only got 2 hand gestures. Right. One of them is good and the other one is not.
Right, I'm with you. But honestly, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for loving the city.
Enjoy the Oreos.
You've been listening to Chicago Stories with Mayor Emanuel. You can subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tweet your guest ideas using hashtag ShyStories. Thanks for listening.